Oh, thank you, Sachin. It is just a privilege to be here. And you touched on it when you were introducing me, but I, I love John Maxwell's definition of leadership. Leadership is influence. And as you mentioned, we all can touch and impact lives. And I think that that's a big mindset shift for each one of us is realizing that if leadership is influence, number one, we all have some of it, but number two, we all want more of it. You think of any time in life when you were mad or sad or upset or frustrated, and I guarantee you it's because you wanted more influence in this situation. You wanted more influence over whoever you were talking to or working with or in a relationship with. And the key is realizing that if I want more influence in any situation in life, I've got to realize that the choices that I make as an individual are impacting my influence. And that's the where I think a lot of times we lose our focus, right? We worry about other people doing or saying things and how that impacts us. And the key is realizing that it's the choices that I make as an individual in the physical or mental or even spiritual dimension of my life are impacting my influence either positively or negatively, right? Every single interaction that I have with someone, I'm either building influence in that relationship or I'm losing it. And realizing that I've got to take ownership and responsibility for not the other person. I cannot control anyone else. I cannot control what they say or what they do, but I always have the freedom as a human being to control how I respond to that. Stephen Covey talks about it in the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And, he calls it being proactive. He says that human beings have the freedom when something happens, they have the freedom to pause and choose how they respond to any situation, right? And it's realizing that every time we choose the right response, a positive, proactive response based on our values, instead of the reactive response based on the emotions of the moment. Every time we get that choice right and we respond proactively, we increase our influence, we increase our options, we increase our opportunities. And yet, when we choose the other response and we choose to respond reactively based on the emotions of the moment, we decrease our influence. We're minimizing our options and our opportunities. Now, all of that says easy and it does hard. It's like New Year's resolutions, right? It sounds good and it says easy, but realizing it and doing it in the moment when something happens, right? And life is tough. Like bad things happen, problems we encounter every single day. It's just part of the human experience. Adversity is part of life. And we're human beings, so we have emotions and we want to respond based on those emotions in the moment. But it's realizing that Andy Stanley reminds us our feelings are terrible leaders. I bet I'm not the only one who's ever said or done something in the heat of the moment and gone, man, I shouldn't have said that. I shouldn't have done that. Right. And it's realizing that it's not easy to choose a positive, proactive response, to choose my response in any given situation based on values instead of emotions, because the emotions are there. We're human. We have emotions, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's realizing that I don't have to respond based on those emotions. Because we cannot control other people. Things are going to happen in life that we don't like. People are going to do things that we do not like. But when I realize that as a human, I have the power and the freedom to choose how I respond to any given situation, that means that nobody else can make you mad. Nobody else can make you have a bad day, can have a bad week, or make you have a bad life, right? Because we're all going to encounter problems. If you haven't, just hang on. It's coming, right? Life is going to throw things at you. And it's realizing that as a human, I cannot control everything that happens, but I always control myself. And that's the mindset shift for a leader is realizing that I've got to take ownership and for that. I've got to take responsibility for that. See, the reason we blame other people is there's only one other choice, right? As long as I'm blaming someone or something else for my circumstances, then I don't have to do anything to change them. It's his fault. He made me so mad. He said something I didn't like, right? As long as I'm externalizing that blame, I'm never going to do anything to fix it because it's not my fault. It's somebody else's fault. It's something else's fault. And as long as we're blaming our lack of success in life on someone or something else, we'll never do anything to fix it. We'll never do anything to change it. And it's taking ownership of that, taking responsibility for saying, you know what? I cannot control everything, but I always control me. And when I learn to do that in a positive, proactive manner, yeah, people will still say things or do things that you don't like, but it's realizing I don't have to focus on them. I just have to take the ownership for what I can do in this situation to move myself forward to a better place. It's not Henry Cloud. Henry Cloud who said, character is the ability to meet the demands of reality. And I love that definition because what I'm really talking about here is it takes character. As a leader, we have to develop our character to be more proactive in any situation, right? But as leadership is influence, I've got to have the character to build my influence. And that starts with me. That starts with the choices I make as an individual. And Hal Elrod reminds us that taking ownership and taking responsibility for everything is the moment that I can change anything. So as a leader, I've got to focus on myself and being that example and setting that example and taking that ownership and responsibility, not for what the other people say and do, but taking ownership for influencing them in a way that hopefully I can raise my influence with them, right? What are the choices that I'm making as an individual? And the powerful thing is that we as leaders have to develop on the character. Research shows us that 87% of our success in life and our influence with other people is based on character, right? Character is who we are as a person, how we do what we do. Competency is the skills, talents, abilities, and knowledge that we have, right? Competency is incredibly important, but it's our character that leverages and multiplies our competencies. We have to have character and we have to have competency. Competency is very important, but it only determines as little as 10 to 13% of our success in life. A lot of times we focus on developing those competencies, and that they're critical. We have to have those skills, but it's how we do what we do that's determining our influence. It's determining our success. And the interesting thing is we call these soft skills, right? But there's nothing soft about improving your character, improving your attitude, building your integrity, right? There's nothing soft or easy about that. That's tough stuff to do. And yet it's realizing that how we do what we do is impacting our success. Now, think of it this way. You may not care about the research, but you've probably seen this in some form throughout your career. People get hired based on what they know, right? People get hired for competencies, a resume, experience, job skills. People get hired for what they know, but fired for who they are. It's almost never a competency or lack of competency that gets us in trouble at work, right? People get terminated based on a lack of character. But from the organizational standpoint, we focus a lot on developing our competencies, but we neglect to develop the character. So from a leadership standpoint, I've got to take ownership of that. If I'm the leader, I'm not just responsible for developing my character, but also the character of those in the team, the character of those around us, right? Those who we're working with, who we're doing our work life with. And as the leader, I've got to take ownership of that. And there again, it's difficult to do, and realizing that I cannot make someone do something. I cannot make somebody else grow, but hopefully I can influence them and inspire them to want to grow. So that's the mindset shift that I really like to talk about. As a leader, I've got to take that mindset shift to stop blaming everyone else and start taking ownership of what I can do in this situation. Because if I'm the leader, then I've got to take responsibility for that. Not just developing my character, but also helping those around me develop theirs. Sachin, I'll turn it back over to you.
Wow, thank you so much for that wonderful talk. Yeah, so so I just just would love to ask you a question, which is
Sure.
so this is actually a crisis time. So we've been facing lots of crises, COVID, and then nobody even expected that this would occur, and thousands of people have become unemployed, and people are still struggling. Some of our most some of them have lost their loved ones, and especially how to so we are actually moving away from this crisis. So now, what is the one advice that you can give to the leaders, the people, the community members who are now actually getting just back to the normal life, now to lead again, to become more confident again, to believe in themselves again. So what is the one message that you would love to give them?
Sachin, I think that's a great question. I think resilience as a leader comes down to I've got to be intentional about growth and development, right? There again, I'm a big fan of, we've all heard the term post-traumatic stress, and there's no doubt that when we go through adversity and problems, we experience stress. But I'm also a big fan of the concept of post-traumatic growth, right? I think it's important as leaders to walk through the lessons that this pandemic has brought us and say, how do we thrive? Not because of adversity, but in spite of it, right? How do we bounce back and be more resilient? What are the lessons that we learn? That's the growth, right? It doesn't happen automatically. I've got to be intentional about that growth. But I'm also a fan of pre-traumatic growth, right? How am I growing and developing myself a little bit every single day? What leadership books am I reading? What podcasts am I listening to? What leadership lessons am I watching on TEDx, right? How am I growing and being intentional with that growth every single day? Not all day, but just a little bit every single day so that when I face problems in the future, I'm better equipped to meet those challenges head on.